All right. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And welcome to episode 443 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with.
Grace Winburn.
And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw this week in part one. And in part two, we're going to be diving into, this is our 443rd episodes, excuse me, of Cinematary. And we've never talked about a James Bond movie like in part two. So we chose a random Pierce
It's a
Brosnan one to kick it off.
it's a good one of his better ones.
Needed 3, right?
GoldenEye,
4.
Tomorrow Never Dies, one
Maybe
more, and then
4.
Die Another Day. He did 4. I forget the.
I remember Die Another Day wasn't very good.
No, it was not. It had Halle Berry in it, and they go
She
to
was hot
Cuba.
though.
She looked amazing.
She was super hot in that movie.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll just get it out of the way. Then I'm going to talk about how hot I think Michelle Yeoh is. But for people who have been listening to the series so far, I've literally talked about that in every episode. This one still super hot. But let's go ahead. Let's do some movies that we saw this week. I'll get us kicked off because I got a new release in. I saw the new M. Night Shyamalan movie Knock at the Cabin, which has been out for a couple weeks now. And I think in the next episode Reed's going to be on, and so I'm excited to talk Shyamalan with Reed, who is our resident M. Night lover. But I'll talk a little bit just to kind of if anything, if you're like going to the movies, I haven't seen Ant-Man, whatever it's called, but like this seems.
Quantumania.
Yeah, then we don't have time for that. Like watch some M. Night doing like a Hitchcock thing. The basics of the story is this couple played by Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge, and their young daughter are vacationing in like this, I think they say Pennsylvania at one time, this remote cabin in Pennsylvania. And the movie starts out with the daughter, Wynn, who is like playing outside, and she's outside and she looks up, and like kind of a little bit in the distance is Dave Bautista, Dave Bautista,
Yes.
very hulking figure, who comes up and like very like softly is starting to talk to her and is telling her, yeah, pretty much we're here, me and my friends are here on this purpose, and we need to, discuss this with you and your parents, and so she just like books it and goes inside, and you see 3 other characters who like come out of the woods with Dave Bautista, and they break into the house and tie the two men up, and tell them about how like this family is going to be the one that's going to stop the apocalypse from happening.
Wow.
And I'm gonna kind of like leave it at that, because it, the way it kind of twists and turns from there is part of the, with M. Night Shyamalan movies, it's, kind of going along with the conceit that he's constructed is part of the fun. And so, but I didn't recognize 2 of the other actors who are like in this group with Dave Bautista, but one of them is Rupert Grint, who most people are familiar with as Ron Weasley in the Harry Potter movies, who gives this like he's for the time he's in the movie, gives this really good performance that I was like, shit, like Rupert Grint's a really good actor. So like shout out to the Harry Potter kids, Emma Watson isn't really doing anything anymore, but like Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint, like,
Incredible.
yeah, given some strong performances. And like I guess Rupert Grint is also in some series for Apple that M. Night Shyamalan does, and I guess is pretty good in that too. So like I'm glad like he's kind of found like a lane to go in, like popping up in M. Night movies. So
A collaborator.
but just really good. Like, yeah, just but easily probably the best performance comes from Dave Bautista, who continues to kind of like shake that not only just from his wrestling days, but also, he comes into he comes into movies and is like in Guardians of the Galaxy and Blade Runner 2049 and kind of, you know, actiony, yeah, big kind of action roles that you would kind of assume from somebody like him. You know, especially just in like the Marvel universe, is playing Drax through all of these different Marvel movies. I'm looking now, like he's in Dune. He's in Dune a little bit, but he also has like a role in Spectre, the James Bond movie, and then was most recently in Glass Onion this past year. But like, he's good
He
performance in
was
that
good at Glass
movie.
Onion, I thought.
Yeah, good in that
Yeah.
movie is good. He like has one, you know, the one scene in or like one or two scenes. He's not in Dune all that much. I'm sure he like gets a expanded role in the next movie, but is good in that. And also in terms of just like action movies, is really good in Army of the Dead, the Zack Snyder movie from last year. um he's just like it's another one where it's like his show. He's kind of breaking away from like the Marvel mold. But Dave Bautista, like, interesting actor. He can do the action stuff like that, but he also, like, this one is a very like understated, um very, you know, kind of internal performance. It's not you know, it's not what he does in like the Marvel movies. So it's good to see him kind of getting these types of roles to kind of show his range. um but yeah, the majority of the movie is just the four characters plus the Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge characters and their daughter, like, in this house. And you know, the four intruders, for lack of a better word, are most of the time spent like trying to convince the family there of their mission to avert the apocalypse. um and so it kind of plays with like you know, it's you know, in a very, I said Hitchcock before, like it feels like a very retro movie, and kind of a classically handled movie from the beginning. The titles feel like something ripped from a movie that was made like the 60s, 70s, or 80s, just in terms of like the style of the opening credits. um you know, you kind of have this very, you know, one line plot that kind of sells you at the beginning. You know, while vacationing in this remote cabin, a family's taken hostage by four armed strangers who demand that they must make an unthinkable choice to avert the apocalypse. um you have just kind of these, you really have much time to develop these personalities in mind. It's very much just, you kind of have these uh, uh, you know, these characters that you kind of have a sense of who they are, that you're working off of. And it's just very much like a genre movie. And I think in that sense it works pretty effectively. You know, I think, you know, M. Night at this point is pretty well adept at like going, here's how, you know, this is how this character is, this is how and it can feel very, you know, very basic, but like he also has been casting interesting actors who can kind of like make the very basic stereotype archetype character work in different ways. I think, like I mentioned, with like Rupert Grint and Dave Bautista and Jonathan Groff in this movie, who gives a really good performance. um One of the things though that's kind of, I've seen some people writing about, is a lot of people have had issues with the main, like the main characters, the main family being a queer couple, because they feel like it like utilizes that to like harm queer people. And at least that's from what I've read. I don't really totally buy that.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's kind of, I mean, it could have been it could have been a, you know, a man and a woman, two men, it could have been two women. Like, it could have been any sort of family structure. And and so it kind of it threads this interesting line, because it does queerness, does does facilitate a lot of just the dynamics of how they're processing through the moment, because it's like you have these four armed strangers. um One of them especially is relatively hostile. And so there's a lot of moments where they have these flashbacks to these two characters meeting and getting to know each other, and clearly have had a difficult history to a degree because of their sexuality. um but at the same time, I think that that's there to inform the headspace of the characters, while I don't necessarily feel like that's important, because that's the interesting thing about this movie is it just kind of has this very neutral, you know, unthinkable choice question that they have to answer, that I think would have operated to the same, to, for the most part, to the same degree with any other sort of family structure. um and I feel like there's while I understand why he's having these flashbacks to like them, um, and their history together, uh, because it's also there to also inform just again, like the difficulty of the moment. And I think with movies like this, you don't need to over explain. I mean, that's just kind of the thing that you get into when you have an M. Night Shyamalan movie, though. He kind of he usually is able to like get to the point really well, but then maybe he goes over a little bit. I think that's kind of where that goes over a little bit. Um but I don't know. I don't totally buy that. I think that just the dynamics of the two characters played by Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge, um it's just kind of interesting on its own right, just as two like a married couple, two partners who are raising a child, like have to make this decision. I think just that on its own. And so I don't totally buy that like he has like this conservative worldview of queer people. I think that's maybe giving the movie a little bit more credit than it really deserves, because it is a very, for a kind of genre movie that kind of poses this astronomical plot. It's still very understated and very contained within its own little universe. um but all that put aside, like I think it's really entertaining. I think it's a nice little, it's just like this nice little movie to go see in the theaters, because it's just kind of, it works like any other M. Night Shyamalan movie. It has kind of its twist, and but it's also not a like aggressively twisty movie. I think that was also the thing with Old. That's not a movie that necessarily has like this monumental twist that you're like trying to figure out. It kind of tells you what's going on relatively early on, and then like lets you operate in that space and try to figure it out from there. And this one I feel like is very much the same thing. Once they arrive at the house, they make it pretty clear what their motive is, and so there's no twist. It just kind of builds off of that. And I kind of like that how he's operating in that, rather than like early on in his career, where people were kind of going to the movies to be like, oh, how's he gonna fool us, how's he gonna twist us, how's he gonna do something. I think I've liked that he's like progressed now into still having that element to a degree, having that hook, but also just playing within genre, and playing within the confines of the space that he creates for himself. This, I've seen that. I was reading some stuff on Letterboxd where people kind of calling it almost like a theatrical, like a play type movie, because it is just in this cabin and everybody's pretty much in that room from the start of the movie to the end of the movie. Um, and that also discredits a little bit of the camera work, and because he shoots the hell out of this thing. So I don't know. I recommend it. I think it's just a fun, like, afternoon, like, let's kill some time and go to the movies and see something fun. So if Knock at the Cabin's still playing around you, thumbs up, high, recommend on that one.
There's a knock at the cabin door. Do you answer?
Maybe if it's Dave Bautista.
Yeah. My car just broke down. I was wondering if I could use your phone. Yeah, you stay the night. You stay the night, Dave Bautista. Rest your little head.
he's got like little glasses on, and he's like I said, he's very understated, like very just kind of calm, has like this calming demeanor to him. It's nice. Um, but yeah, it's still in theaters now. The other movie I wanted to talk about was War of the Worlds from 2005. This was Steven Spielberg, one of his films that he made with Tom Cruise. And I saw that I saw a picture of them together at some sort of like pre-Oscar event, and I was like, man, Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg, what a partnership. Um, and so I had never seen this, so I wanted to check it out. And I'd heard people and I'd read some like reassessments of this because I think when it came out, it was it was very mixed. It's a very because mind you, like this comes out in 2005. This is 4 years after 9/11. This is a movie that's predominantly taking place in New York, and it's not a spoiler to kind of be like this. Like the War of the Worlds is about this alien, this legion of aliens coming to destroy the world and like take over pretty much. And so um you just have like this very harrowing, haunting imagery, 4 years later from 9/11 of these just giant like spaceships entering the New York's, skyline, and just starting to just like what they do is they like shoot this laser and it doesn't like kill like blow up people, so there's no blood or anything, but it's almost scarier because you think of 9/11, you think of like people just covered in ash and smog and stuff like that. And so when this like beam hits people, they just like poof and like turn into ash, which I was
Oh,
just like, this has to be an insane movie to like be taking in if like 4 years after that. And so you have that, you have like um just people, just mass numbers of people disappearing and dying, and just kind of people, especially after the bulk of the attacks have happened, you just have like these large groups of refugee people just like walking around, like walking to just find somewhere new, and then um being unable to like get to a next place because then the aliens kind of come and continue to like barrel in. And it's an interesting like counterpoint to something like the Avengers movie, which very much, at least in my opinion, is like this kind of 9/11 fantasy where you have this, the enemy, in that case like the alien people who are coming to attack the Avengers. um but in the Avengers, it's like, it's almost like 9/11's happening, but we have these, American superheroes who come and like save the day and save New York from everything. And in this one, that's not the case. It's just terror and mayhem, and I don't know, like it's not even um that like the CGI, like how they develop the aliens in these spaceships and things like that is overly terrifying. It's just kind of it's the sound. It's like the screams and then the silence, and just like the lasers kind of have like this very like bass heavy rumbling noise. It just kind of what I can imagine like on that day, like just these loud percussive sounds that sound like like nothing you've ever experienced before, just these inhuman sounds, and just like this violation to a degree of like the American public, where there are people, there are these things crashing into the World Trade Centers that that seems so unreal, like in the American psyche, that some like stuff would be destroyed and people would be in America attacking the country. And so like it really taps into that psychosis, which I really was just like, damn, like Spielberg's really going for it over here. um but that's that back to like the plot of this. It's a super funny movie that I understand the reason why he casted Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise is also somewhat miscast. So like the beginning of the movie, it's Tom Cruise, and he's playing like this divorced dad who works at the docks. Who like I was like laughing the entire like beginning of the movie because he's just like, yeah, hey Scotty, you want to go like grab a beer after something or whatever, you know. He doesn't have a Boston accent, but he's just like very like, yeah, what's up, dude? But you know,
Super
it's
blue collar, yeah.
yeah, and you're like, it's like
That's
Tom
Tom
Cruise.
Cruise.
He's not a human. I
No,
love the guy, but like he's not a human, and
he's
so
one of the aliens. Yes.
yeah, it's almost more strange to like watch him like pretending to be like this divorced dad who's just like working at the docks and is like this blue collar dude. You know, like I was watching, like I'm watching this, I'm like, if like in terms of movie stars, like Robert Mitchum would have killed in this role. Paul Newman, Robert Redford, like would have been great in this role. Tom Cruise is not made for this role, like in terms of just being this very believable, but he does. But then you see like how he reacts to the aliens and the scenes, the kind of horror based scenes after that where they're like in closed quarters with these aliens, and then you understand why he got Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise is really good in in those moments. There's a moment early on when the attack starts to happen, so you have like the storm happen in these and like the lightning is bolting in these the whatever the machines that are gonna come and start like, you know, vaping these people, whatever, I don't know, like laser, I don't know what they do, like it's like lasering these people, um
Zap.
zap, that's good,
Zap. Zap.
zapping these people, and you know, he's like with this like group of people and they're like trying to like process like what the hell is this, because at first you just see like this hole, and then you see like the like the whole, like it's like the ground starts to move, and it's really cool. I would assume that he did this like on a practical set where you like see almost like a, it's like it looks almost like an earthquake where like plates are kind of shifting in terms of like the different buildings. You have this church that starts to kind of like crumble, um and then the you know, the alien machine comes out and starts zapping people, and like him, well, one, you get like the Tom Cruise run, he's like sprinting away,
Yeah.
um but then once he's able to get away and he like gets back to his kids, like there's just like this moment where he's like covered in, which again, like going back to the whole 9/11 imagery, he gets back to them, he's just covered in this ash,
Oh,
which which is just like, you know, pretty
people.
much the blood of all these people who were just killed by the alien machines.
Yeah.
And he like just like can't speak, and like he really like, it's a very effective, you know, well acted scene where like he just can't speak, like he's just shell shocked, and they're like trying to go like, dad, what's like, what the hell's going on with what's, and then finally the son's like, what's on you right now, like what are you covered in? He kind of like goes, I don't, and so then he like goes in the bathroom and he just like sees himself just covered in this ash and is like having to like wipe it off, and there's, it's just kind of like this harrowing, like again, just this 9/11 imagery playing with you, but like in those moments where it kind of turns into like a, you know, much more of like an action movie, then you understand why he got Tom Cruise, because Tom
Yeah.
Cruise is very effective like in he's very effective in acting as a movie star in an action sequence,
He has a
you know.
physicality that
Yeah,
a lot that other leading men don't have, a tenacity. Like, yeah.
yeah, like so then, so that's why I'm thinking like, you know, Tom Cruise is perfect in those moments, while somebody like a Paul Newman would have been perfect in like those human moments where he's like, you know, having to sell you on being this blue collar guy. You know, another like Harrison Ford would have been good in this. Like young Harrison Ford would have been perfect for this role also.
If
Because
only
he,
9/11 had happened sooner.
if
Then we
only,
could have had young Harrison Ford.
if only, if only.
If only.
Uh, but yeah, the only thing, the only thing you also, well, actually, first before I talk about the ending, the other thing I really like about this movie is it also like plays into this, like the immediacy after 9/11 of people immediately wanting to like sign up and serve in the military, because you have his teenage son who's just kind of, you know, not necessarily like a washout or a burnout or anything, but it's just like you know, like a 17, 18-year-old kid who just kind of is like, you know, fuck you, dad. Um, who clearly they don't like have a strong relationship because he's gotten divorced from his mom, and like they have a whole, his mom is like married this much wealthier guy, and there's that kind of whole dichotomy going on. Um, but like for the bulk of the movie, Tom Cruise is always having to like pull this kid back, kind of go, because he's like wanting to charge into the action. Um, until finally like there's this scene where he's gonna like run into the action, and these people are like trying to take he's like left the daughter at this, he's like, stay there, I'm gonna go get your brother. And so like he's like holding the son down, and he's like looking, and like these people like with best intentions are going like, you need to get out of here, come with us, girl. And she's like, no, no, my dad's over, you know, that. And so he has to choose between like helping his daughter, helping the son. The son's just like, let me go. And like so he chooses to go help the daughter, and like the son goes sprinting off where these tanks are like going to fight the um aliens, and you like don't see him again.
Ever.
Well,
Maybe. I don't know.
that's when
I
we
haven't
get
seen, I don't know. I
that's when
don't
I
watch.
get to the end. That's when I'll get to the ending. But like, but I think like that. You know, initially he's kind of portrayed as like this, just kind of this annoying like, screw you, dad, like son character. But I think it becomes more of like Spielberg's commentary on this like, um, this like switch that a lot of people had, where they were immediately like, we got to join the, aren't we have to join the military, we have to fight these people, because he's constantly going like, we need to get hit back at them, we need to hit back at them, we like, you know, he's like putting himself in danger to attack these aliens, because he's like, we got to hit back, like they attacked us, we got to hit them back. um and like, you know, Tom Cruise is like the older figure who also has like observe like how they're you know how they're these aliens are killing people, is kind of like, no, it's not like the military weapons aren't having any effect on them, like it's like you're just kind of throwing yourself at a lost cause, which I feel like again plays into the whole conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq. um but it kind of, it undercuts it in the ending. So at the ending, like the entire movie they've been trying to get from New York to Boston to, so that he can reunite the everybody with his ex-wife and her new husband, because they, at the time when this was happening, like they had dropped the kids off with him because they were going to go on a trip to Boston to go see his parents. um and so it has this whole scene which would have been, I would have just cut or reworked or like made it a dream or something, but like where he like walks up and he's like carrying Dakota Fanning, 'cause she's the daughter,
Oh,
and like they like open the door and they're just like, oh, and like the sun runs out because the sun somehow like got to them before the Tom Cruise character got to them. And it's like this whole like kind of like wishful fantasy of like, oh, like all of this happened, but we're reunited once again. And I'm kind of like, no, but like that's like, again, like I need to maybe do some research to kind of see if Spielberg's talked about this, because I'm kind of like, that's a little bit of bullshit. One, that kid would have been dead.
yeah.
Like he rushed into a conflict that was going on right there. Like I don't see what would have happened there to like he died. Um and then who knows if like the wife and all of them, who knows if because like you like get to their street in Boston, and like you know, there's blown up parts, but it seems like pretty fairly intact, and you're like, no, like everything you've seen from anywhere else in this movie is just these, you know, they've been lasering all this stuff, and there's just buildings and houses, and everything is just, it kind of exploded. um and so um yeah, like I just don't totally believe or buy that like he got through all this, and then he found his ex-wife and her husband, and like reunites with the kids, and like it's this whole, I'm like, no, like that's also
They
that,
scared the aliens out of Boston.
yeah, I was
Yeah,
like what.
like I bet it's that. Like,
And so yeah, I don't know, the ending kind of undercuts it, but again, if it's like kind of like, if there was a scene before where it seemed like, oh, like Alien or somebody, like something happened to Tom Cruise or his daughter, and but it was very ambiguous, and then it went to that scene, then I would have been like, yeah, like this is a fantasy scene, like this is just kind of, but it just the way that it transitions from the scene before to that one, it seems like it's not a fantasy scene, and I'm like, if this is not a fantasy scene, that's a weird one. So overall, super positive, and really liked War of the Worlds a lot. I think it's definitely not one of Spielberg's best, but like as a director reckoning with 9/11 4 years later, it's pretty interesting. So yeah. It's on HBO Max if you want to watch it. But Grace, I've talked for 30 minutes, so I'm gonna give it to you.
Sure. I liked listening. You got a lot of
Thank you.
yeah. Well, I coincidentally have been watching a lot of James Bond. I've been getting into some very heavy bondage lately. Kicking it off
Nice.
with before I even knew you guys were doing the series, before I even knew that before I even realized that Michelle Yeoh was in the movie that we're going to talk about in the second half, Tomorrow Never Dies, before I even realized that was her, like I was watching like a ton of James Bond. I started with The Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton. So the Bond just before Pierce Brosnan. And then I watched GoldenEye actually before I watched this as like fun little pacing.
Yeah.
So what to say about GoldenEye? We're introduced to handsome, suave, sophisticated Pierce Brosnan. I would say that he is most certainly my Bond, the Bond that I grew up watching. I think he's the most talented, the epitome of gentleman spy. And we are introduced to him through a sort of more of a car race between him and Femke Jensen, who plays the villainess, not Natasha. Something on a top, like for the name puns. I forget her character's like first name, but it's
Xenia Onatop. Yeah.
Yeah, on the top.
Is she like she
She
Russian?
is a Georgian
All right.
assassin.
Yeah, kind of.
And her
Soviet.
thing, yeah, her thing is Soviet. Yeah, her thing is that she gets off on like beating people up, or like there's an S&M aspect to it, but she loves and like experiences this real thrill in killing and violence of any sort. So that's kind of sexy. That's kind of cool. On the top, very dominant. But this is a whole Russian. This is Russian spies. You know, we've seen Bond do Russian spies before. Nothing new. But this is about the GoldenEye satellite laser.
Yeah.
So it gets high tech. It's always fun watching like the Bond movies through the year and like watching the tech, and then like also seeing like who's our enemy again and again and again. And it's usually
I was thinking about that while watching this one, because this one also like gets into like more new tech than like there's still like the kind of trademarks of like Bond, where there's like a missile and a sub, like, and the one we're going to talk about, there's a missile and a sub and shit like that, but at the same time, like it feels like it's engaging with more like you're mentioning in GoldenEye, like, you have this Georgian assassin spy or whatever who, like it's kind of playing with like the Soviet Union Cold War aspect of things. And this one, you have like the you have China, kind of up against Britain and the US to a degree. But yeah, it is kind of, I was thinking about that also while watching Tomorrow Never Dies, but I'm sure like, especially with GoldenEye, that it was kind of a revival to a degree of Bond after after Timothy Dalton in those movies. So I feel like they also have to do some new stuff.
Yeah, and then you think how they do something new, and it's a lot to do with computers. There's hackers to sort of like bring us into like what we'll be seeing the rest with, like what we'll be seeing more and more in Bond movies is computers. So get used to this hacker talk, passwords, encryption, firewalls, in English, that sort of speak. So we get used to it, but not in Russian. Alan Cumming is in this, and Alan Cummings. He's the big hacker in it, and his tagline, "I am invincible," and then he like poses and muscles because he's the biggest brain and he knows how to code better than everyone else. It's also very funny, and then Bond movies are hilarious. Like
Yeah, for the most part.
They're a lot of fun. There's always a good joke, a good one-liner, and there's a scene where we get a familiar face from like the cast of Bond characters. I wish I should have written these things down, but we get the revival of Bond of an actor who I will look up, but he was in The Living Daylights. He was the bad guy in The Living Daylights, and now he's got a new name, new character. He's a CIA agent, a friend of James in GoldenEye, and I don't think he's back in Tomorrow Never Dies, but I forget. I could look, but
I'm trying to look him up for you. Is it the Jack Wade?
Yeah, it's Joe Don Baker. He was in The Living Daylights, and then he's back again, whole new character, as the kind of when put up against Pierce Brosnan's James, he looks like kind of a slob.
Yeah, he's
So
the
the
guy.
American spies are kind of
Yeah, he
not
was
so.
the one. He was in this one. He's in the movie in the Tomorrow Never Dies. James like goes to get to see the Americans to like do the
Oh
encryption
yeah,
thing, and then he
yes,
drops them off the ship. Yeah, that's that guy.
yes, yeah. He is back. Yeah. So, but when you put the American spy up next to the British spy, which one's hotter? Which one's more appealing? Which one seems to get the job done? It's James, but then like
oh, in this one he like flexes in because he just seeing from Wikipedia, he's from Texas, and so he like just is like this like cowboy, like, "Whoa, doggy, what's up, Jimbo?"
Yeah, he always calls him Jimbo. Yeah, and but he's got the connections, like and whereas like the other is like the cold, calculated gun. This is the
Yeah. Again, playing with like that American Britain versus Soviet Union Cold War kind of thing going on.
Oh yeah, but it's great, and I really enjoy. I really enjoy the theme song for GoldenEye, and I love all of the Bond theme songs. We can talk more about that in part 2, but it's a great one as a introduction to Pierce Brosnan. It's very nice. It's very nice to meet him, and then with Tomorrow Never Dies, hey, it's good to see you again. This is great. So it's the let's do this again sometime, and then we meet up again. So.
And then Die Another Day, and we're like,
Oh,
we've had our fun. You should go and do like Mamma Mia, where you're fun in that movie.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, cool. Well, we'll get to Tomorrow Never Dies after this short break.
This commercial break.
Back to your featured programming. Ooh, all right. I had to look up. I didn't realize Sheryl Crow did the theme song for this movie.
Oh my God. Did I ever know it was Sheryl Crow? Literally. So when I say Bond is not just like a hobby, like it's a way of life in my family. Like we all watch James Bond movies. We had a compilation or a compilation CD of like all of the James Bond theme songs. And Sheryl Crow's was one that we would like to imitate, especially because it's like so like screechy and nasally.
It's a very like late 90s. It makes sense for like the time period.
Yeah, it's kind of waily too, and so we'll just screech it for anyone and everyone to hear at a frequency only dogs can hear. I sang along when I started watching the movie, and I scared my cats. So
It happens.
it happens.
Yeah, I'm looking. So yeah, so he was in 4. He did GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and then Die Another
The
Day.
world is not enough.
That's the
Listen,
one.
I know,
That's the one
yeah,
with Denise Richards where she's the
nuclear scientist.
yeah.
That's me
Was
quoting her in her 30 Rock episode in a James Bond movie. You should see Denise Richards on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
yeah.
Her best work.
I'm trying to what? What was I looking for? Oh, I was looking for. Is GoldenEye the first movie with Judi Dench
Yes.
as M? Okay.
No. Because I think. Is it? Well, you have the computer. I'm not looking.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Let me see. Yeah, it was because looking, Die Another Day was her 4th appearance as M. So that means she would have started with Pierce Brosnan. Oh, okay, cool. That's what I thought. I was like, I'm pretty sure Judi Dench. But she was talking. I was just reading though. Let me see. Do they have it in? Yeah, she's like losing her eyesight, so she's not gonna be able to act very much.
That's so sad.
Yeah, I'm like, oh damn, she's great. All right, you want to do it?
Sure.
Get into some bondage.
Yes, we're into some heavy bondage.
That was clever. Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. I was just
Thank you. That means a lot.
all right.
Means a lot.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 443 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be continuing our Michelle Yeoh series with 1997's Tomorrow Never Dies, which is her big entrance into Western audiences who were not familiar with her Hong Kong work. Directed by Roger Spottiswoode and written by Bruce Firestein. The film stars Pierce Brosnan, Michelle Yeoh, Jonathan Pryce, Terry Hatcher, and Judi Dench. Media mogul Elliot Carver wants his news empire to reach every country on the globe, but the Chinese government will not allow him to broadcast there. Carver doesn't take no for an answer and plans to use his media empire to fuel flames of war between the Western world and China. Thankfully, James Bond is onto the insane news tycoon who travels to China to stop him. Technically Vietnam. To stop him with the help of Chinese secret agent Wei Lin. Bond 18 was greenlit after the positive public reception to the teaser trailer for GoldenEye in May 1995. Following GoldenEye's success in reviving the Bond series, there was pressure to recreate that success in the next production. This pressure came from MGM, which, along with its new owner, billionaire Kerkorian, wanted the film's release to coincide with their public stock offering, which sounds like something the villain in this movie would do. Co-producer Michael G. Wilson commented, "You realize that there is a huge audience, and I guess you don't want to come out with a film that's going to somehow disappoint them." Well, Michael, you've done that a couple times. Initial writers for the film included excuse me. It was the first Bond film made after the death of Albert Broccoli, who was heavily involved in the series production since its inception. And the rush to complete the film drove the budget to 110 million. Initial writers on the movie included John Cork, Richard Smith, and novelist Donald E. Westlake. In 1995, Westlake wrote 2 story treatments in collaboration with Wilson, both of which featured a villain who planned to destroy Hong Kong with explosives on the eve of the city's July 1997 transfer of sovereignty to China. Westlake used some of his ideas for a novel he completed the next year, though it was not published until 2017 under the title Forever and a Death. Director Spottiswoode said that in January 1997, MGM had a script also focused on the Hong Kong handover. However, it could not be used for a film opening at the end of the year, so they had to start, quote, almost from scratch at T-0. Bruce Firestein, who worked on GoldenEye, wrote the initial script. He claimed that his inspiration was his own experience working with journalism and viewing both Sky News and CNN's 24-hour news coverage of the Gulf War, stating that he aimed to, quote, write something that was grounded in a nightmare of reality. The role of Elliot Carver, which went to Jonathan Pryce, was initially offered to Anthony Hopkins, who was also offered a role in GoldenEye, but he declined in favor of The Mask of Zorro, which made me think, I was like, Jonathan Pryce is solid in this role, but Anthony Hopkins would have been really good. While many reviewers compared Elliot Carver to Rupert Murdoch, who that's I was thinking of while watching this movie, Firestein based the character on Robert Maxwell, with Carver's reported death bearing similarities to that of Maxwell's. That is, quote, missing, presumed drowned while on a cruise aboard his luxury yacht, as stated by M at the end of the film. The title was inspired by the Beatles song Tomorrow Never Knows. The eventual title came about by accident, though. One of the potential titles was Tomorrow Never Lies, referring to the Tomorrow newspaper and the plot, and this was faxed to MGM. However, due to a typing error, it became Tomorrow Never Dies, a title MGM found so attractive that they insisted on using it. The title was first not to have any relation to Ian Fleming's life or work. Yeoh, talking about her role in the movie in an interview with The Independent last year, said, looking like me, I don't think sexualization was going to be a big problem in the James Bond movie. Bond was ready for change. Bond had to evolve because the fan base was also evolving. Women were choosing the movies to go and watch, and we don't always want to watch ones where we're being sexualized. The New York Times in 1997 said this latest film is such a generic action event that it could be any old summer blockbuster, except that its hero is chronically overdressed. The Washington Post said Tomorrow Never Dies isn't one of the great Bonds by any means, but it's familiar, flashy, and enjoyable in all the right places. And Roger Ebert said, Tomorrow Never Dies gets the job done, sometimes excitingly, often with style. The villain, slightly more contemporary and plausible than usual, brings some subtler than usual satire into the film. And I like the chemistry between Bond and Wei Lin, all the more convincing because the plot doesn't force it. On that note, Tomorrow Never Dies. Let's start by talking a little bit about Pierce Brosnan and Michelle Yeoh and their chemistry, because at first I was getting worried. This reminded me of we talked in the first episode about a couple of her earliest movies, specifically like Super Cop or Police Story 3 and then Super Cop 2, which she stars in. And I know with Andrew describing Super Cop 2, it's like, she's the titular super cop in that movie, but like is not in it all that much. And then you had Yes, Madam, which was one of her very first movies that she's in and good in, but also not, doesn't appear very much in the movie. And so I was getting worried because you see her like twice early on in the movie, like in the first half, but you really don't get Michelle Yeoh time until really like the second and third act start to kick off. That whole first like 45 minutes is very, she appears like twice for very short periods of time. But what did you make of the Pierce Brosnan Michelle Yeoh pairing?
I was also a little worried that they would focus more on him and less on her talents and abilities. And I still kind of feel like they did a little, but they gave her some interesting I guess you could call him bits, but Pierce Brosnan is, I mean, he just attracts. He is a magnet. He he has chemistry with whatever woman he lays his eyes on. Um, with all of them, with every woman that he encounters that we see, and it's just very easy and very effortless. Um, but he also doesn't like. I didn't feel like he outright sexualizes her like from the get go, like from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
Carver does from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So he's the one that like identifies her as like a sexual being, an object of desire. Um,
But you're like, he's the bad guy, so yeah.
yeah, so it's like, yeah, that's fine. That's what you're supposed to do. Like you're
Yeah.
scum. Um, you're where's your wife? Like, but
She's in the movie for 15 minutes and then dies. So.
yeah. And they set her up to be the Bond girl, so then it was a nice
Yeah.
little like Mr. like nope, zoom in this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are both well matched as agents, as spies, and I do think that they see that. Like
Yeah.
they recognize that like that the other is good at what they do. And I honestly think that they clocked each other like from the very beginning, because when she went up to him and asked him like, so what type of banking are you in? Like I think that maybe she could kind of tell that
Mm.
he was a spy, and because the same way that he could tell that maybe she was too.
Yeah.
Um,
I also like that they gave her that Michelle Yeoh is just like this insanely talented physical action star, like from the
yes.
movies that we've watched so far in the series, especially like something like Wing Chun that we watched for the last episode. Like she can hold her own in just an action sequence. And so I was a little, like, it was, I'll give it credit because it does give you one scene where like she goes back to what seems like kind of like her home base, and she gets jumped by those the Chinese agents that were sent by the general to kind of like get rid of her. And,
Yes.
and Pierce Brosnan shows up, but the majority of that set piece is like to just kind of show off Michelle Yeoh kicking kicking the shit out of a bunch of people, which is like her specialty.
Yeah.
um and so I was glad they at least gave her that moment, because I'm like looking at a lot of the one, you have, it's so different with how, especially watching these last few movies, it's so different how Western filmmakers shoot action compared to Hong Kong filmmakers, especially.
Would you say
Um,
like not good? Like not
well,
like
yeah,
they
it
don't
just
really know where to put the camera. Like
yeah, and especially with like movies like this, like it's just like it's so over edited, and so like it doesn't, you watch something like I watched for to start the series Police Story 3, which is her and Jackie Chan, and like the way that they just like the camera just kind of sits there and lets the actors develop the sequence and in the action from there. It's just so, and so you have a little bit of that. I think they do a decent. I still though say they do a decent amount of job of like letting her do her thing, because that's the thing. Like love Pierce Brosnan, but she's the better fighter. Whether it's
yeah,
whether with the character or even just in real, like just she's been working with Jackie Chan for 15 years at that
yeah.
point. Like I mean, so she knows, and she's led her own action movies in Hong Kong. Like she knows what to do. And so I was happy about that. Then it kind of sticks her later on with like guns and stuff, and you're like, I don't want
Right.
like,
It felt like she was kind of like they were kind of pulling her back, like holding
well,
her
it
back.
limits her because that's not what
Yeah.
she's like good at. Yeah.
Right. Like she has to be rescued by James, at least in his mind, good thing
Hmm.
I showed up, good thing I was here.
Hmm.
Um, like, but they show us that like here is an agent, here's someone that can like you hold your own. But then it does suck that they like she definitely I feel like she definitely could have let loose like on the sub. Like they could have done
Yeah.
plenty with like hand to hand there, but instead of like really letting her go, like winding her up and letting her go while James is dealing with Carver himself and Stamper, they put her with two guns, and
Yeah, and
then
that's
she has
just
to figure out what to do with
and
that.
And that's so boring because like, the last episode we watched was Wing Chun, and like there's this incredible action sequence where these guys show up at because she runs this tofu shop, and they show up at the tofu shop, and they're so mad because she keeps beating up all these bandits, and they're just like, and the guy literally is like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, and then you're gonna be so beat up that you're gonna become like a housewife and go and have babies. And she's like, all right, dude. And then like they have this incredible scene where she's like flipping the tofu and like fighting guys and like kicks all their asses while still like, and it's like this creative set piece where like she's like has this thing in her hand that she has to keep steady, but then is still able to like beat the shit out of all these guys. And again, that's the difference you get from like
Yeah.
Western action
Could've
movies to
done that
Hong
with the
Kong action
guns, like
movies.
some interesting gunplay,
That's
like
what I thought too, because there's the
yeah.
one moment where she like runs out of bullets and she's kind of like, and so I was like hoping she would start, but yeah, I think it's more just like with those types of movies, like you just don't have enough time to like let something like let a set piece, like you need a good couple minutes to like let that play out, and like they're not going to do that in like a James
We're on a
Bond movie.
clock, like,
Hmm.
the clock is ticking, you can hear it, and it takes, like, a good 5 minutes to count down from, 30 seconds to 0, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And
it
so
always
it's just so like I give them credit because they didn't completely like sideshow her. Like you still get like like I said, you get that one scene in when she's like at her home base, and then you get another scene. Just any of the fight scene, like she's kicking and like there's that one scene like late that I sent to somebody because it's like Carver like has her and he says something, she's like kicks at him.
yeah, and then he goes, "Hiya, hiya, ha,
Yeah, then
ha."
and you're just like, Jesus Christ.
That's so racist, like, man, like,
Again,
otherwise, fuck you,
at
like,
least
fuck
he's the
off.
villain. At
Yeah, at
least
least
he's
he's
the
from the
villain.
villain, yeah, you said.
But yeah, so I was happy because she at least got even the sequence when they're on the motorcycle and they're like handcuffed together, like there's some physicality there, like it's great.
That's
Um,
incredible.
but but yeah, it's just it's kind of it's more of a bummer just that, I think she's just inhibited by it's just more like Western filmmaking, action filmmaking compared to Hong Kong action filmmaking.
Yeah, they, like, hint at it, like, when they show us that she is a spy, like, she busts
Mhm.
in that leather cat suit and heels, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
take a minute, yeah, leather cat
Yeah.
suit and heels, yeah,
They
absolutely.
really don't give her a lot of time in that where we can just really like soak
Really,
it in
like, get a good
either.
look,
Because I saw her initially, I was like, "Hello."
yeah, but it's like and they put her in these spindly little heels and,
Mhm.
like, they're holding her back, like, her costume's holding her back too, like, I'm sure she could do plenty of she could do some real damage on that
Yeah,
leather cat suit and
I
heels.
love her outfit when like when they're handcuffed together and they're like on the motorcycle because it's still like sexy, but it's much more like you can fight in this.
Yeah, you can fight. It's tough, girl. It's
Mhm.
awesome, but, like, they hint a little bit at that when she, like, walks, like, she, grappling hook or whatever from her trendy
Mhm.
little belt, totally spies, and, walks down that steel girder. That sort of hints like, "Oh, hey, that's interesting." Like, we don't really see that from the female characters, like,
Mhm.
but, I bet she could have done that without the wire or
Yeah, no, yeah, she like
yeah, she coulda jumped, but anyways, um, back to the real question was the romantic pairing, it works so well, and I especially wanna talk about the motorcycle sequence,
mhm.
because that is such a physical moment between, um, James and, Wei Lin, it's that's them having sex, like, wouldn't you say, like yeah, like, the way that
Yeah.
they're facing, the, like, up and down, the, like, physicality of it, them fighting for dominance, like, that is the sexiest scene
Well, because it's also
in the movie.
it's also something that you don't like James Bond, like whenever he gets like on a motorcycle, it's very like he's like doing the hard turns and like escaping people and maybe like shooting or like punching somebody. But like what she's doing, like just the physicality of like how she's able to swing her legs around and, and contort her body around like
Yeah,
on top of it. Yeah, no, it's like it's just like yeah, they're like getting away from these guys, but they're also fucking.
yeah,
Um
very much. So it's
and
like,
well, then it culminates in them like taking the shower together, and I'm like, oh my
yeah, like that's very hot. So it's like again, like just them like fighting together, like on the
Yeah.
same team, like that's sexy. Like the chemistry is right there. So it's like it's a fantastic pairing, and she's a
Mhm.
fabulous Bond girl. Terry Hatcher, like no offense, girl, I love you in Desperate Housewives, but like, what were you doing in this? Like,
I think she said this. I was reading quotes from her, and she was saying the same thing.
like she's
Yeah.
barely in it. Like, their romantic
It's
come
ve it
together is
it's a very, like,
flat.
forced yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
forced, like, "Oh, they used to be lovers," and you're like, I mean, okay.
Yeah, and then, like, when James, like, comes to her dead body, like, I mean, I love Pierce, and I get what he's doing, but he kinda, like, hams it up, like,
Just like,
I get it, you're really
"Ah!"
sad over this, like, the, like, caress, the gentle kiss, like, it definitely, like, there definitely was a softness that he was trying to evoke, but he kinda hams it up, and it's
Yeah.
like, "You have
Well
real chemistry with Michelle, let's go back to that."
well, and you also in that scene get the whole funny like, that whole the Dr. Kaufman, like,
Oh my god.
just a hilarious I was just what an absurd, weird character to, like, add in this, who then has, like, ramifications along the way because, like, that guy, like, he was, like that was his mentor, and so he's
He
like, "I'm
was
gonna kill
hyper-focused
James
on
Bond
me.
because" yeah, and I'm like you're like, "What the hell? What's going on?" Like, this dude it looks like a dude who, like, works at an accounting firm who, like, showed up and was like, "I'm gonna kill James Bond today."
He has, like, the funniest like, he's just, like, funny to
He's like
listen
this funny,
to.
like, Austrian accent. Yeah, no, he's just
Yeah.
a it's a weird but no, going back to the motorcycle sequence, yeah, because that I mean, that at least allows, like, Michelle Yeoh to yeah, like, she has it's kind of like that setup she would get in a Hong Kong movie, like, we talked a little bit about it with Police Story 3, but, like, Jackie Chan movies, it's always, like, there's one thing that's, like, inhibiting him from being, like, 100% there to fight. Like, he has to like hold something or he has to like keep something from falling, like there's always something going on and he's having to like fight around it. And so like I love that they do set up that sequence where it's she's handcuffed to him while he's driving
Well, he's
and
the dead weight.
yeah, and he's pretty
Yeah.
and yeah, and so it's kind of funny because initially it sets it up as like I need you to like I got to focus on drive, but then it becomes her like moving around, and it becomes this very physical action sequence, which is also again like showing like there's just like this sexiness to it again that culminates in like the two of them just having like this like raindrop shower thing, um that you're just like yeah like fuck.
Yeah, that's hot. Like, the Bond movies are great. Everything is sexy, and, like, not just for guys, but for girls too. Like, they know what is hot and what is, like, sensual, sexy, and, like
Yeah.
and they are good at putting that up on the screen.
But especially, like, up to that point, most of the sex scenes, it's like, it's Roger Moore or Sean Connery kind of in, like, it's like them kissing and, like, falling into a bed,
Yeah.
and, it's not it's but, like, that one's great because it doesn't need to be like, it's just, like, this super sexually charged scene, you know, that has the it's like at no point are they like making out or having sex with each other. It's just like this it's just like this sex through action thing that's amazing. Really like that sequence.
We like sex in movies. Like, no, do not do not misunderstand us. We prefer none of this, like, cut to black nonsense. Like, no, we
Well, and especially like in this way, like where it's like I'm just gonna put that out there.
yeah, pro sex.
Um
Yeah, like, make no
But, like,
mistake.
especially in, like, this way where it's still forward like, if you're like, well, if you're one of those people who goes, "Oh, I don't like sex in movies 'cause it doesn't forward the plot," like, this moves the plot along
This
and
yeah,
is and is literally an action sequence, but it's also them having sex.
and then also, like, James having sex with, Paris Carver, that also
Yeah.
advances the plot. It gets this sort of vendetta going. It kills her. I mean, it's all very important. So shut up.
Well, and I like
Yeah. Just
I mean,
watch.
and honestly, I guess I don't necessarily agree with your assessment that like they're a romantic pairing. I mean, it kind of gets there at the end, and I honestly don't totally, but like to me, like honestly, it was when they kiss at the end, I kind of was let down because it reminded me a lot of I thought we were gonna have this discussion again with Michelle Yeoh movies where she's dropped in as like the either the lead character or like the second lead character, and but there's in there like especially like in Police Story 3, like Jackie Chan is in love with her because she's super hot and kicks a bunch of ass,
Yeah.
but like there's never any like romantic consummation there. The same with like Wing Chun, it like gets kind of consummated at the end, but it feels very forced. The majority of the movie is just her kind of doing her thing. And so I like that this movie somewhat picks that up to a degree and is like, yeah, like you have this very sexually charged scene. You kind of have like a little bit of a chemistry there, but I feel like for the most of whenever they're matched up together in the movie, it's more just like two sexy people, but it's not like necessarily, it doesn't feel like it's ever careening towards some sort of, even just some sort of relationship in a Bond movie sense.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know. I think the way that he rescues her and where he like at
Oh
the very
yeah,
end,
at the very end, it sets up for that. I agree,
yeah,
but like their initial like pairing together, it feels more just like it doesn't feel like they're setting her up to be like again, like you mentioned it, like Terry Hatcher's kind of set up as like the Bond girl, and then you have a switch, kind of switch on it. Um, but this one, I don't necessarily feel like they're like pushing them together like in some in some other
okay, not
movies.
yeah. I sorry, I misunderstood you. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, I do agree because the Bond girl is always super fumbly, bumbly, needs James to save her, and
Hmm.
there is none of that here. I mean, like in James' mind, yeah, good thing
Yeah.
I got here, but no, she even said she's like, I had it under control. Like, kind of like they're easygoing with each other, but she's like, yeah, I definitely had that under control. And
And she
so
and she even, like, completes the stuff, again, it's not like she, like, is supposed to go do this and it doesn't work, and so then she
yeah,
like, he has
messes
to
it
help
up.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very competent, like, like, you think of, like, the last set piece where he's gonna go deal with, the missile, and she's gonna go deal with the engine room, and, like, she does complete that. She ends up, like, kinda getting
Yeah, she knows
captured, getting into this
exactly what
whole
to do,
fight.
where to go.
Yeah, and so I think that, like, she's a much more interesting character than, especially some of them, like, because like, even, like, Halle Berry, in, like, the last Pierce Brosnan movie or, things like, they're not they're pushed more together as, like, the romantic co-lead with James Bond rather than, like, I think Michelle Yeoh's character is very, like, independent of her own, so that's why I was kinda bummed at the end when they're, like, making out. I'm just like, "Oh."
Well, because it's not you,
Liter
right? Like, that should be me.
That
Literally,
too.
that too.
That
Yeah.
too.
I'm
But
teasing,
no, like
but
it like literally like the end of Police Story 3, they like do the whole thing and Jackie Chan's kind of like looking at her and she's like, "All right, fuck you, see ya." And
yeah,
like that's the end of the movie. I'm like, they should have just done that. She just should be like, "Yeah, whatever, see ya."
yeah. Yeah, like, he goes in for the kiss, and she's like, "Whoa, we work together. This is office harassment."
I'm gonna call HR.
Yeah, like, I don't feel comfortable with this. I need to talk to M immediately. Like, that would be more
Yeah.
interesting. But it's James Bond, and he always gets the girl, and
Yeah, no,
here's
I
the
get
last
that.
girl standing, so it's gotta be her.
You're the last one in the
You're the
room, so
last girl here. We killed all those dudes on the boat, so it's me or a dolphin, I
yeah, at
guess.
least it just is like a kiss and it's not like, then cut to some scene with them like in some random villa, getting it
Yeah.
on. I'm like, again, like you got your sex scene between the two of them earlier on. Um what did you make of kind of like we were talking in the first part about Goldeneye and like how like Bond's becoming more they're trying to kind of modernize it just in terms of current the current politics and things like that. What did you make of the whole villain plot and like this kind of media mogul character like operating these like fake conflicts to like start real conflict, start this like World War III between the Western powers and China.
First my thought went to a narcissistic media megalomaniac trying to control what people look at and read. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
cool, Elon Musk, yeah. Um,
It's very
Like,
it's a little Elon Musk. Like
yeah.
if he had like a giant car, like a giant Tesla car or a Tesla sub, you know.
Yeah,
Sit.
yeah, it was very that.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, this isn't that far off." Um, like, in a way,
Hmm.
and then, like, all these other, like, right-wing media outlets that spin news this way, and then the more liberal stuff that spin it that way, like, I think Tomorrow is a brilliant name for a newspaper. I always
Yeah.
really liked that, but I always hated the way that Elliot would type on his computer. I hated that.
Where
Um,
I didn't understand why he had like a giant screen where he was like typing headlines. I was like, first off, the media mogul, the the Jeff Bezos isn't writing the headlines for the
he's
Washington
firing
Post.
off tweets is what he's doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
can't you just see, like, Elon in his, like, headquarters, and he's got a little tablet like that, and he just
Well, Elon would do that, but you're just
yeah,
you're just is like Jeff Bezos calling down like this is what the headline should be of the Washington Post today. I'm like I don't know, I was like as the media person like that's a little much. But also I would like a giant computer where I could make headlines. That sounds
that'd be
fun.
great. Just play around, headline
Um
machine generator.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of funny because I think it's it's still like relatively pre-internet, but
Mhm,
feels very like you're saying like it feels very prescient for stuff today. Not
definitely.
and like it shows that like Elon Musk isn't that like he's just the long string of other megalomaniac media mogul
Other
people.
newspaper newsmen,
Yeah, just like
alternate,
of people like controlling media. Like yeah, you're just like yeah, there's a long line of them.
"Give me your
Um,
pictures, I'll give you the war," like, it'll happen.
mhm.
We can manipulate images and headlines and whatnot. Um,
Yeah,
there were a couple of lines, in the movie that also felt like um, super future seeking or future vision, where they were
mhm.
like, they're talking about they're developing new products, and it's like guaranteed to break down, so you'll have to replace it, and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, yeah.
Apple, like you guys are like, it was so good, like
I was laughing. There's like, he, Q's giving him all the different gadgets, and like you had the one where like he can like start the car and then like drive it around, and I'm like, yeah, we
mhm,
can pretty much do that now. Like
yeah,
I can start my Honda CRV like through my key fob thing, and then if you have like a Tesla or something like you can drive it's self driving. So I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
that's just like we all own James Bond spy equipment now.
Q equipment, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So that it was great. Like, they definitely set this up to be more um tech savvy, and more spy gadgets. I like spy gadgets. Like,
Yeah.
those, like, that's always cool. Give me a
I
phone with a taser. Like, that rocks.
This queue was also kind of entertaining because, like, the most recent version is the Ben Wishaw, who's kind of fun, but like this one, I like was just like annoyed with Bond the entire time.
Yeah,
It was
that's his
also just like,
thing.
and it was also just like, stop making sexual puns.
Yeah, like, enough. Like, I will call HR. Again, like, I bet
At the end,
James
he
Bond
was,
is just like a fucking nuisance in the workplace. Like, this guy again, he's gonna harass me about my body and like ask me out later. And I'm gonna say yes, but it's the
but he
principle of the
shouldn't have done
thing.
that.
He shouldn't have done that in the workplace.
I'll see you at 8.
I'll see you there. Pick me up. But
Uh,
no, I like Bond and Q, they set up this fun little like sideshow between the two of them of just like gags back and forth. Like, it's cute. They work super well together.
we also didn't, I think they give them more prominent, or at least like in the Daniel Craig Bond movies, they give them much more prominent roles. Like, yeah, I feel like you get to know Q and Moneypenny and M like much more pronounced in like these movies that because like this is Judy Dench's first Bond movie as M. She's not given not a ton to do. You kind of she fits in the role because you're used to seeing her now, but like then you're just kind of like oh she's not given too much to do.
It's a girl. What? And they never let her forget it. It's always you don't this line, like, where the private PM is like, you don't have the balls for this job, and she's like, maybe, but at least I don't have to think with them. M stands for mother, girl power. Like, She definitely gives she gives tough she gives tough bitch. Like she's great.
Yeah.
Um
Well,
very intimidating. But
unfortunately, Ray Fiennes is now playing him, but still tough energy.
yeah, tough act to follow.
Yeah.
But
But no, she
what we see of her, she's tough and we like her. I
yeah.
like her. Yeah.
Um yeah. I think overall, like relatively, like I kind of agree with I forgot one. I think it was like Washington Post. Like this is like very like run of the mill. It's not necessarily an incredibly memorable Bond movie like over the scope of the whole series of movies. But I mean it was fine. I enjoyed myself to and like I said, like I was happy after watching kind of doing this series to see that Michelle Yeoh wasn't just um like used as a pawn to kind of do something with the James, it was like they at least gave her like they gave her stuff to do. Could she have done more and like actually been the star of the movie? Of course. But
She should have had her own spin-off series, but could you imagine her like trying to teach James like some fucking kung fu and like could like teaching him how to like focus his breathing or like break a board in half or some shit and like
that's literally in the Mandarin version of Police Story 3. There's like this long scene where she's like teaching because Jackie Chan is coming from um I forgot who it was what, but one of them's coming from Hong Kong, and I think she's teaching him like mainland China stuff, and like that's the whole thing is just like him being a doofus and her trying to like teach him all these different things, and her just being like, "God damn, you're annoying."
then maybe we could have gotten that and then maybe
Yeah,
that could have put us closer to more of a romantic lead. But I mean, I kind of wouldn't mind watching him like learn how to like do a spinning split kick or something, and
yeah.
that would be fun.
The most important question though for this episode is, out of all the James Bonds, who do you think is like the one who's actually like what's the ranking of the ones who are actually good at having sex? Because all the Bonds are like are hooking up with women. But like I was watching Pierce Brosnan in this one, and I was like I feel like Pierce fucks. Like he knows what he's doing.
Yes, he does. Moneypenny even calls him a cunning linguist.
Yeah,
So
she's like
you always were because he's busy studying abroad, or one or two or three or four.
before you give your pick. I think Pierce and Daniel Craig are the ones I most believe.
Yeah.
Know what they're doing.
Yes.
I'll be honest. Maybe this is a controversial pick. I think the least likely is Sean Connery.
Interesting. Oh, why?
I feel like, and it's part of like his version of Bond, but he's just like he's like the most of like just kind of belittling and sexist to the women that I feel like he's going in there. It's all about like his machismo. Like I feel like Pierce and Daniel Craig, like they're reading the woman and like meeting them, halfway. I feel like he's just going in and just like, I'm gonna fuck you, and then like that's it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, no, I guess I see that. I would say Daniel Craig above Pierce because in I think it was Quantum of Solace or Skyfall, which one has Javier Bardem?
Javier Bardem, yeah, the
Yeah,
Skyfall.
Skyfall. He makes advances on James, and he's like, "Yeah, that'd be cool. It wouldn't be my first time." And it's like, okay, so that rocks. Like a very progressive James. Like
Dude
so.
knows what he's doing.
So I think, and then also, of course, the scene in Casino Royale with Mads Mikkelsen where he's got his fun little chair situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there was something there too. So I say
I don't know.
Craig, then Brosnan.
That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I feel.
We're in agreement. So it sounds like we might agree on this.
Yeah.
Okay, very
For
cool.
me, it's they're pretty, but like yeah, like Pierce the whole time, like dude's just exuding. Like they're like yeah, that's why Terry Hatcher is just like, my husband's here, but also James Bond just showed up, and it's Pierce.
Oh,
Pierce.
this guy?
She's like,
I
yeah.
don't know him. Take the
Let me
ring
let me
off.
let me just let me take the ring off and then take my dress
But she's
off and then
trying,
be
like, she
dead in
can't,
like
like,
5.
get it. It's stuck. That would be a fun little, like, bit.
He
Give
goes
Terry
over.
Hatcher something to do. She's so flat in this.
Yeah, she's kind of, I don't know.
Because she was pregnant.
Yeah, it's just kind of a very like, it's a bummer. I thought that I thought that it was gonna be more like she was the Bond girl, but then you're also gonna have Michelle Yeoh, and like it's gonna be Michelle Yeoh and Bond like kicking ass, and then the Bond girl kind of be like, James. He's just like,
Rescue
not
me.
now.
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with Michelle Yeoh.
I'm hanging out with my friend. Yeah. No, they're more buds, but yeah.
Yeah. But they just save the world, so that
And
they
they're
may
the
hook
two
up
hottest
once.
people alive, so it just
Yeah,
makes
there's and they're hot. So there's like, listen, we're hot. We just saved the world. Like, let's hook up one time, and then we'll still be friends.
call it a day. I'll see you
There
in
we
the
go.
office Monday. I might
See
be a
you
little late.
Monday.
I
We
might be
won't.
a little late after this, but
Yeah. Any final thoughts from you on Tomorrow Never Dies?
um no, but thank God you guys have finally done a James Bond movie.
I don't know when if we'll. I don't. We'll have to see if we ever do another one.
I
I
hope you
don't
do
know.
because I always have plenty to say, but this was a very fun nostalgic rewatch for me, and little Grace had no idea who Michelle Yeoh was, and
Hmm.
then now as an adult, it's nice to go back and be like, "Oh my God, that's you! I had no idea how much I loved you." Like,
Hmm.
so it was a treat. So thank you for the series, and thank you, Michelle. You really outdid yourself, gal.
Yeah. Um.
Do you still have the leather suit and kitten heels? I wonder.
So, I mean, like she's been
Enough.
super hot
Yeah,
throughout. Still hot today.
yeah, yeah.
Still super hot today. All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us at Facebook at facebook.com/cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle at Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinematary, where we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you would like to support the show, patreon.com/cinematary. We're always happy to have those who are fans of the podcast supporting us in what we're doing. Next week, we're going to be closing out our Michelle, or not next week, in 2 weeks. We're going to be closing out our Michelle Yeoh series with the one the movie that I think most people are. I think this was the one that kind of got her on the radar with Western audiences, but this is the one that definitely people knew her for until probably really recently, and that's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So we're gonna get a little whoosh action, which is not, you get a big Michelle Yeoh, but then you also get Chow Yun Fat kind of getting on the scene. Ang Lee, we got a bunch of Ang Lee nowadays, so yeah, should be a good one, and then we'll announce what our next series is after that. So until then,
James Bond.
thank you all for listening. It's gonna be James
It's
Bond.
gonna be James Bond.
Grace, gear up. Grace is going to be on every episode, everybody.
You guys are gonna be
We're going to
sick of
watch
me.
all 40 years, or 40, was it 40, 50 years or whatever of Bond. So
Worth it.
until next week, thanks y'all for listening. We'll see you then.